before we get started with the presentation, is there anything that you would like to emphasize for the veterans out there?
Number one, thanks for having me back.
Absolutely.
But benefits are deserved because they served. And the only way you're going to get those benefits are to request them. They are not just going to come after you. You have to come after them.
Hey, family, welcome to another episode of the Black Man's Roundtable. I am your host, Rodney Butler, and today we have on, Miss Ramona Roper. She is a training division director at the Georgia Department of Veteran Services, Veteran Service. I think that's the way you say it. Yep.
Correct.
And she's going to be doing a benefits webinar with us today. If you're a follower of the roundtable, you have seen Ramona on here before, and she is not only does she do these great webinars for us, but she's also kind of our resident expert here on veterans benefits and at the Black Man's Roundtable. Hey, Ramona, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, Brother Rodney. How are you doing?
I'm great. And as always, it is great having you on. It is one of our most sought after episodes that we do at the Black Man's Roundtable is when we do your webinar for the veterans benefits. So we are looking forward to some updated new information and some information that probably need to be just reiterated to the veterans. But before we get started with the presentation, is there anything that you would like to emphasize for the veterans out there?
Well, number one, thanks for having me back.
Absolutely.
But benefits are deserved because they served. And the only way you're going to get those benefits are to request them. They are not just going to come after you. You have to come after them. One thing, and I'll discuss this a little later, is what seems to be a rampant, process of people going and paying for those diagnoses and paperwork. A veteran definitely does not have to pay for those benefits. Accreditation, definitely see somebody that's accredited, and I'll discuss accreditations a little later on in this presentation.
Great. Appreciate it. I always tell veterans that if you are paying for something, then be suspicious of it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but if you're paying for something, then be suspicious of it, because the veterans, the VA really supplies a lot, for the veterans. So
Most definitely.
absolutely.
Most definitely.
So without further ado, we will get started with the presentation.
There it is. So my job basically with the Georgia Department of Veterans Service, I am the director of training, just like Rodney said. However, it's my job and my team's job to train veteran service officers for this organization and to make sure that their training is compliant, so that when a veteran comes to them or a claimant comes to them, that we're advising them straight. So I kind of made this presentation a guide to applying for VA benefits. And without further ado, Brother Rodney, the first benefit that I'd like to talk about is Veterans Health Administration. Technically, there are three separate lanes of VA. There's Veterans Health, which is there to take care of you physically, mentally. Then there's benefits, which is the monetary benefits. And then, of course, there's the National Cemetery Administration. We're not quite ready for that yet. But the first benefit that I'd like to talk to you about is under the Veterans Health Administration. And just like I said at the top of this presentation, all benefits have to be applied for. It is not automatic. It doesn't matter whether you serve Vietnam, Korea, World War II, Afghanistan, Iraq, Gulf War. You have to come and bring that application to the VA. So VHA is not an automatic benefit. You have to enroll and apply for Veterans Healthcare. The application is going to be a VA Form 10-10EZ, or you can apply online at va.gov under the Healthcare tab. Now, if you are not receiving any benefits, i.e. compensation or pension, it is income-based to get into VA healthcare. So if you've been out of the military, say 20, 30 years, you've never applied, now all of a sudden you have to have a surgery, or maybe your medications cost a little much, and you're just now thinking about getting into VA healthcare, unfortunately, it is income based, and that income threshold changes per county, per state. So I can't tell you what it is here in Clark County um, versus Douglasville. So you're definitely going to have to do your research on that. However, apply online to get it quicker. Let's see. Again, income requirements for veterans that are not service connected. There are 8 different priority groups. Number 1 being veterans that have a service connected disability that is 50% or more. That means you're exempt from any copays. Then it changes a little bit more. Group 3, I know those are for veterans that served in country in theater, say Vietnam, Afghanistan, Saudi. Those are different. Okay, those mean you're automatically enrolled. However, if it's a presumptive condition, whether it be service connected or not at this time, then you can go ahead and get in under the premise that, hey, there could be a presumptive condition and you may not have to pay. However, the VA does have what they call medical cost recovery. So, say for instance, if it's you went to the VA ER for a broken arm, which is not service connected, they have the right to bill your insurance carrier. So, again, you'll have to get to know those once you get enrolled in VA healthcare. Big thing, veterans healthcare is not insurance. It is not insurance. So you can't just go to your doctor and say, hey, I go to the VA and they're going to bill. It is not insurance. It is, however, under the Affordable Care Act, credible coverage. Credible coverage. So if you only go to VA, like myself, I'm 100%. But I go to the VA for all of my health care. So I don't carry healthcare insurance outside of the VA. So when I file my taxes, they'll send you, I think it's a 1010 Charlie form or 10 whatever form it is. But I turn that in on my taxes for credible coverage as far as being covered medically. Treatment at VA facilities does not necessarily constitute disability. Now, what does that mean? So, you'll get veterans, hey, I go to VA healthcare, I'm being treated for, say, ingrown toenails, but you're not service connected. But your VA doctor or nurse may tell you, oh, yeah, that's service connected. However, when it comes to the benefit side of the house, they're going to look, were you ever treated for these ingrown toenails while you're on active duty? And if you were not, you're going to be denied. Okay? So again, treatment at VA healthcare facilities does not constitute a benefit on the benefit side. All right. Post 9/11 veterans healthcare eligibility. Now this gets a little differently. So again, if you got off active duty, now this is just for primarily the post 9/11 vets, all right? So you have up to 10 years from your most recent discharge to get enrolled and be covered during that time. That's free healthcare. That's free healthcare. All right. So at least one of these have to be true about your active duty service, that you served in theater, in a combat operations for not only after the Persian Gulf War, but also served in a combat against hostile forces during the period after November 11th of 98. So basically, when the Gulf War started, August 2nd of 90 forward up to present. Again, it's not just from if you got out in 1998, it's 10 years. So you have to look at when you got out. So say, for instance, if you've got a veteran that comes and they got out in 2023, then yeah, they're going to be eligible for that. Now, one thing to also keep in mind when it comes to service connection, this is one thing that I always teach my new service officers. Look at that date that they got out. So we're looking at 2023. A veteran that just got out has at least 12 months to have the condition diagnosed, even if they were not treated for it while on active duty for service-connected compensation purposes. What does that mean? Got out, say, November of 2023. Got diagnosed with ingrown toenails. within there. So right now we hadn't gotten to November of 2024. So if they were treated, it is considered a chronic condition. Then yes, they can be considered for service connection within 1 year of application of their ETS. All right, now we're going to get to one of the topics and one of the sides of the VA that most veterans always want to talk about. And this is going to be the benefit side. And this is your monetary benefits. So the first slide we're going to talk about, 9 times out of 10, what it is, how to establish service connection. Now, service connection is what it is. Everybody says, hey, I want disability or I want comp. That's different. It's called disability compensation or service-connected disability compensation. It has to be a condition, a chronic condition that can be connected to the service. All right? Number one, if there was in-service event or treatment. So say, for instance, you're running PT, all of a sudden you fall down, you break your ankle. There's your in-service incident. If it's broken, they're going to get you to a TMC or a hospital, and they're going to treat it. So yeah, okay, if it were, say, for instance, just a fracture, not a full-on break, but just a fracture, hairline or otherwise, they're probably going to splint it, put you in PT, and send you back to duty or whatever, put a cast on it. But there should be a record of ongoing treatment. Diagnosis. So we get a lot of veterans right now, we'll say they've been out 5-6 years, and then all of a sudden, hey, I've developed hypertension. Well, if you weren't diagnosed or treated for hypertension while on active duty, then 9 times out of 10, if you're looking for direct service connection, you're not going to get it. Okay, it would have had to have been diagnosed within that 1 year of you getting off active duty. However, there's some other little tricks of the trade to try to get that hypertension in there. But if you're looking for direct service connection and you weren't diagnosed or treated for it while on active duty, unfortunately, you're probably going to get denied. Elevated blood pressure does not equal diagnosis. All right. Now, current medical treatment. Say, for instance, we're going to go back to that sprained ankle. You got hurt on a road march. You sprained it really bad. You went on sick call, say maybe 2 or 3 times in the course of your tenure in the military. And guess what? Now all of a sudden they're saying you gotten out, you then going to the doctor. Now they say, hey, you've got arthritis in that ankle. That is a chronic condition. The arthritis itself does not necessarily have to been diagnosed while on active duty. However, again, you had in-service event and or treatment. And now the residuals of that injury is the arthritis. So yes, that comes in. All right. Now, let's say, for instance, you've got sleep apnea, which is another big time disability that a lot of veterans are getting denied for. So with sleep apnea, say you got a buddy statement from your roommate. Oh, Sergeant Butler, he snored like a choo-choo train in a hurricane, and sometimes I noticed he wasn't breathing. Well, your roommate, unless he's a doctor at that time, he can only write what he or she witnessed, okay? But you're still going to have what they call a medical nexus with rationale. What does that mean? Well, you're going to see, you've had sleep studies done, you're seeing, I guess, I don't know, a pulmonologist that says, yeah, okay, Sergeant Butler, he has obstructive sleep apnea. However, Sergeant Butler was never treated or diagnosed while on active duty. However, the doctor can say, my medical opinion is that due to this, and this, while this veteran was on active duty, it is my medical opinion due to these studies that most likely than not, Sergeant Butler suffered from obstructive sleep apnea while on active duty. That comes in. It is a plausible medical reasoning as to why, 2 years after Sergeant Butler got off active duty, he's been diagnosed. Sometimes that can come in. And we'll talk about sleep apnea being a secondary condition other than a primary a little bit later. But buddy statements. These are statements with people that had first-hand knowledge. A lot of veterans want to come to us with statements from family members, spouses, oh, okay, the veteran, he told me that he's been this way when he went in after he got back from Afghanistan, he's this way. Unless that person is a licensed psychiatrist or psychologist or physician, really doesn't matter. Most times buddy statements come in with hey, I saw Sergeant Butler jump off the back of that deuce and a half. He rolled his ankle. He laid there saying, oh, my back hurt. And that person has firsthand knowledge of what they witnessed and the direct aftermath. Your spouse can't say that unless they were right there with you when it happened in a on active duty. 9 times out of 10 they didn't see it. However, if you go home to that spouse and, oh dear, what happened to you? I fell off back of a truck, somebody hit me with a duffel bag and I fell. That's after action, but it's most impactful from someone that was directly there to say, yeah, I witnessed this too. Okay. All right. Service connected disability compensation. It is the monetary benefit to getting a disability that can be directly caused by your service. It's a condition or injury that was incurred by active duty military service. The condition presumed to have been caused by military service. That word presume, presumptive. So when it comes to, and again, we're going to get into post 9/11 Vietnam and all that stuff, the PACT Act in just a little bit. However, I'll use myself. I was a paratrooper, 82nd Airborne Division. Cool. So, even though I got hurt, one of the things that I always tell people that had a very rigorous MOS or skill identifier, say for instance you're a ranger, paratrooper, stuff like that, but you never had an injury. But here we are 10 or 15 years later, your knees are crap, your spine hurts, all that good stuff. Well, you can actually say that, this bad back, I've got, 200 jumps, I was a jump master, all that good stuff. Then it is presumed that the stress of what you were doing in the military caused those injuries. So again, those can come in. Is it always going to work that way? No. However, it's hearing loss. We'll use that for an example. So you've got your artillery people, you've got your mechanics. Those conditions in MOSs are prevalent for hearing loss. So a lot of times the VA will just concede, even if you had normal hearing getting off active duty, the VA will concede that this particular MOS caused, or the probability is high, that hearing loss and tinnitus came from there. So therefore, it is presumed to have been caused by military service. So that's how you get a lot of those conditions in. Now, I get veterans that will come in, well, my back hurt, I did road marches and the boots and this and that and the other. Normal rigors of military service does not equal disability compensation. Okay? So again, come to an accredited service officer and we will discuss those matters for you. The other way of getting service connection indirectly or secondary. Secondaries are conditions that are directly caused, correlated, related to a primary service condition. So let's kind of step back to sleep apnea. So let's say, for instance, you're a Vietnam veteran or even a combat veteran. Let's just label it as that. A combat veteran served in country and you are service connected primarily for PTSD. The VA conducted studies that, guess what condition can also be caused from PTSD? Obstructive sleep apnea. So again, a lot of you veterans that were not diagnosed or treated for obstructive sleep apnea or OSA while on active duty, if you have a chronic mental health disorder such as PTSD, there are studies that can link the OSA to PTSD or mental health. And so that's how you can get those conditions in there. So again, bring your case, your claim to an accredited person, and then we can discuss that. Not everything that you're suffering from is going to be considered a secondary. All right. Me, I again hurt my knees on a jump, hurt my back, and however I didn't hurt my hips. But guess what? My hips came in as secondary to my knees and my back because of the gait, the way that I walk. So those are secondary conditions that can come in. Sometimes secondary conditions actually are compensated higher than a primary condition. Okay. The other monetary benefit that some veterans are eligible for is what they call non-service connected pension. And what is that? Pension is an income or needs-based program for veterans of wartime only. Okay. Does that mean that they had to go boots on the ground in a combat theater? No, no. You can be on the home front or not have deployed, but if you have a disability that is considered totally and permanently disabling, and you serve during a period of war, and you have limited or income, if at all any income, then you would be eligible for pension. So normally it's for veterans that are over the age of 65. However, if you are a younger veteran, younger than Social Security age, let's put it that way, and say for instance you had a car accident and that left you permanently disabled, so you can't work anymore. You're 45, so yes, if you served in theater, if you're 45, clearly you served after not or during the Saudi period, the first Gulf War period. So yeah, anything after August 2nd of 90 up until present is still considered wartime. So yes, not necessarily had to deploy, but that comes in. You would present those disabilities to a service officer, bring your income. So again, if you had Social Security, retirement, whatever, that all comes in. And the third block on the top, non-service connected pension can be for any disabilities that are considered permanent and totally disabling. It can be for anything, not necessarily those for compensation purposes. We see applying for pension a lot for veterans, World War II, Korean vets, and some Vietnam veterans who did not go boots on the ground. And if they are either in a home or they have very high medical expenses, things like that, though, again, it could be disabilities for anything, car wrecks, whatever. But they have to be considered permanent in nature, and then we apply for those benefits. And it is determined on a monthly income versus monthly outgoing medical expenses. So a lot of people don't understand. I pay rent, I have a car note, this and this and this. However, monthly expenses don't they are not deducted from this benefit. It's only medical expenses. So if you are paying your Medicare premium, that comes off. Health insurance premiums, those come off. If it's life insurance, no. However, if a veteran has a long-term care policy, that comes in. And those are policies that if they go into a nursing home or assisted living, then they can draw off of that. It comes in as income, but it goes right back out as a medical expense if they're already deducting from that policy. Now, final thing is their net worth is currently, this is total, $155,356. Now, net worth, you're probably thinking, oh my goodness, what about the home? What about the cars, personal items? No, those are those veterans. What they are talking about, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, IRA accounts, those are considered net worth, money markets. Those are the things that they're looking at. The primary home, and notice I said primary home, the primary residence is not counted. So a veteran, could have a $1 million home and still be eligible for this. However, if they sell the home at $1 million, guess what? Now they're out of pension contention. Now, if they have secondary homes or properties in excess of 2 acres, the VA kind of looks at that. Well, that could actually be sold for profit to take care of you. So if we've had veterans that have summer homes down in Florida, some winter homes up in Colorado, they look at the secondaries, the secondary property. If it can be sold or, spent down, then that comes in. So you want to look at that 155,000. So let's look at it like this. Veteran comes in and says, well, I have $200,000 in net worth. All right. That does not automatically disqualify them. They could, the veteran, the spouse could both go into assisted living. And if most assisted livings I know here in the Athens area, they could cost up to, $6,000 to $7,000 a month. If that comes in, guess what? So that's what, like 70 something $1,000 a year. That comes off of that 200 something thousand. Guess what? Now they are below the net worth. So the VA looks at a medical spend down, if you will. What comes in, what is your total value versus what is medically being spent out. All right. So let's say, for instance, we have a veteran who only draws Social Security, and monthly they might get, say, $3,200. Well, technically, they are over the income guidelines for that month. However, again, if they are spending out insurance premiums, their Medicare premiums, maybe their deductible, they might go to 6 to 7 doctors where there are co-pays, the mileage to go to those doctors, maybe that person's on dialysis, things of that nature. So we have to look at what we call a medical spend down. What does it take for that $3,200 to get below? And it could wind up zeroing it out. And therefore, that veteran would then be entitled to a full pension. And it's not that much. However, it would be better off than them having absolutely nothing. Now, second and third block, if you notice, they're a little darker than the other blocks. This income pension is not in addition to what they're already receiving. It is not in addition. Again, it's a medical spend down. You may be eligible for both pension and comp. However, the VA is only going to pay you or compensate that veteran for one benefit, and it's always the greater benefit. So sometimes we'll have veterans that'll come in, they're 10% for tinnitus, 10% for hearing loss. Well, that's overall 20%, and they're only getting $300. Whereas now they have to pay a caregiver or go into an assisted living facility. Then guess what? They convert, you apply for pension. Pension with aid and attendance is going to be much higher than $300. I don't know the exact amount, so don't quote me right now. But it's definitely going to be, say, maybe $2,000, which is the better benefit than the comp. So they convert it from comp to pension, and the veteran is going to receive the greater benefit. Burial benefits. All right. So this is actually another benefit paid under the VBA protocol. It's not under NCA. So what is a burial benefit? That is a monetary benefit for a veteran's surviving beneficiary. Does that necessarily mean the spouse? No, it doesn't. It's basically whoever paid for the veteran's services or end-of-life services. Now, eligibility requirements. A deceased veteran, number one, was receiving a monetary benefit at the time they were living. So if they were receiving pension, eligible, the beneficiary is going to be eligible for burial benefit. If that veteran were receiving comp, same thing. If they were receiving a check in life, then the beneficiary is eligible to apply for the burial benefit after they have passed. Died of a service-connected condition. Now, I'm going to jump down to the last bullet there. For a service-connected death, that currently pays out at $2,000. That's it. That's it. Now, what does that mean? Oh, well, I was receiving service connection for my knee. That's not what they consider a service-connected death unless your knee broke apart and you broke your neck, okay? Normally, you're going to look at conditions, Lord forbid, suicide. So if a veteran had mental health issues and that was the only thing that they were service connected for, then usually a suicide is considered a service-connected death. Now, that kind of goes into a lot of other little factors that I'm not going to get into in this platform. Again, I would encourage you to definitely talk to an accredited service officer. The cause of death was possibly due to a presumptive condition. We see this a lot with Vietnam veterans. Vietnam veterans didn't come to the VA. A lot of them were very upset with VA. I'm not going to bother with it. However, we know they were boots on the ground per their DD 214. Say, for instance, they died of lung cancer. Lung cancer is a presumptive condition. So, even if that veteran never applied during their lifetime, the death certificate and their service, once that beneficiary brings it in, then it's a presumed disability or presumed death, and therefore it is still compensable for the $2,000 rate. All right. Other than that, if they were on pension, then the VA pays the plot allowance and the transportation only. And so usually that's maybe about, I don't want to say, but it's less than $2,000. Okay. And again, veteran status does not entitle all beneficiaries to this benefit. So unfortunately, if you had, say, for instance, a peacetime veteran, never applied for any benefits, was not receiving a monetary benefit, never did anything with the VA, maybe went and got the prescriptions, however, died in a car accident, they're not going to be eligible for the burial benefit. The family would be entitled to the marker, the flag, and the presidential certificates, but as far as a monetary benefit, no. And one of the things to also think about when we're talking beneficiaries is non-service connected pension. That is also for surviving spouses of wartime veterans. So again, if you have a peacetime surviving spouse, they're not going to be eligible for a monetary benefit, not only burial, but also pension. And we have to tell a lot of surviving spouses that unfortunately, due to that veteran's time they served in the service, they're not eligible for any monetary benefits. So that's one thing to also keep in mind when dealing with an accredited person. We're going to tell you the way that the VA looks at things and the laws as they are written. And unfortunately, we get a lot of folks in our offices that, well, the funeral director said this, and I called the VA and the VA said this. Everyone on those 1-800 numbers are not veterans, and they're not well rehearsed or, rehearsed in knowing what the laws are. So we definitely want to make sure that you see an accredited person when dealing with benefits. Okay. All right. The PACT Act of 2022. And this primarily was the largest expansion of VA benefits in history. And a little bit of the history, it was a law that that came about because of Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson. And it is the Promise to Address Comprehensive Toxics Act. All right. And basically that was signed into law August 10th of 2022 by President Joe Biden. Now, when we talk about the PACT Act, there are so many variables that come about. It not only expanded benefits, but it extended health care. So again, we're looking at all facets of benefits when it comes to there. Now, some of the highlights is everybody automatically thinks is, Gulf War and post 9/11 eras. No, it actually reached back to the Vietnam veterans as well. But we're going to talk a little bit more depth into this. Not only does it cover just these soldiers and veterans that went into a combat theater, there's a subcategory that helps out with others too. So biggest thing with PACT Act was it added on 20 or more presumptive conditions for burn pits, Agent Orange, and other toxic exposures. Now, one of the things that they're expanded on is adding on, and this just happened a couple of months ago, were even more presumptive conditions for especially those that were in theater for Southwest Asia, Iraq, and Afghanistan, Kuwait, and all of those those territories. So it added on just a few more. One of the things I know, it hasn't actually been published, but is coming out, is, guess what? Obstructive sleep apnea. So there's studies being ran right now. One tidbit that I always tell veterans, even if you don't want to come to VA for your health care, I always advise veterans to do so. Reason is the VA is actually heading these studies. They're conducting and holding on to those registries. They're creating these registries. So when new presumptive conditions come down the pike, guess what? The VA already has those studies. They have those studies. One of the things that I do, me and my team, we do so much research. We find, if you think, your athlete's feet was connected to your service in Saudi, we're going to try to find it. Um, there's no such thing right now. Okay. But so I always advise veterans, definitely, if you do nothing, enroll in VA healthcare, get on get on those Gulf War registries, get on the PACT ACT registries, get in there. So if all of a sudden, 5 years down the road, you've got something that you've never heard of before and no one in your family has it, bring that to the VA, and then they're going to expand on that. And that's how those laws get changed. That's how those laws and conditions get expanded upon. If there's a cluster of so many veterans that have this, and we're not talking just here in Georgia, we're talking, nationwide. If there's a cluster, that's how those laws get changed. So we definitely want the VA. You can use your TRICARE, you can use your Blue Cross Blue Shield. But when it comes to something such as that, and another thing is, if you're already service connected for conditions, the VA, they have quality review teams. They're gonna look at those records to see if you didn't come into your healthcare appointments. So that's a whole another ball game. But VA is not the VA that it used to be, 50 years ago. This is a new VA. My own story, I came to VA in 94 and I said, oh my God, I'll never come back. Little did I know, 10 years later, not even 10 years later, I'm sorry, 5 years later, had a traumatic incident with one of my knees. And hey, I had a $2,000 deductible, told my mom, take me to VA. I went down there and I've been in VA healthcare ever since. So don't let the stigma of what you think VA is, deter you from there. But back to the slide. It added more presumptive exposure locations for Agent Orange and radiation. So for those guys that were at Thailand Air Force bases where, it used to be prior to the PACT Act of 2022, you could only have 3 MOSs, a security officer, military police, or a dog handler in order for you to be considered for Agent Orange contention. Well, that's out the window. The PACT Act, if you were on one of those bases, guess what? You're in. It doesn't matter if you were a cook or whatever. So all of that came in. VA, it requires the VA to provide toxic exposure screenings to every veteran enrolled in VA healthcare. So again, get with your primary care. If you know, hey, I've been in VA healthcare for 5 years and I've not had one of these screenings, get with your primary care. That is now required. It is required. So new enrollments, I think they automatically do it. For old soldiers like me, you have to go and request that. And again, just like I said, this improves the research, staff education, and treatment as it relates to toxic exposure. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, burn pits. Like if you were a diesel mechanic, you were around diesel, and I look at it like this. If there was an SDS, a safety data sheet on whatever in your shop, you were exposed to something, okay? So definitely kind of keep up with those things. All right. Now, for Vietnam veterans that were, the PACT Act only added on 2 additional presumptive conditions: hypertension or high blood pressure or monoclonal gammopathy. People are like, oh my goodness, what is that? MG, as they call it. That's excessive proteins in the blood that could cause cancer. So you definitely want to keep up with those for the Vietnam veterans that are in your shop or in your family. Hey, just have it added on. But hypertension was one, this is what I was talking about. This is now a presumptive condition. So if a veteran had been denied hypertension in the past and they are a Vietnam veteran, that we implore them to come back, reapply, and as long as they have an actual diagnosis, it can't just be elevated. It has to be the definitive diagnosis of hypertension or high blood pressure. And then they can get it added on. And I will just kind of tell you, um, if the hypertension is controlled by medication, yet it's still high, like I think I want to say like 110/90, the maximum you're gonna get is 10%. Okay. The reason I like to throw that in there, I have the most veterans, they'll come in, well, I'm taking, 2 pills or 5 pills a day. Unless your resting heart rate is like, I think it's 200/140 or 160, will it only go up to 20%. So if you're getting it and it's controlled even with medication and it's primarily, I think it's like 110/90 or something like that, you're only going to get 10%. All right. However, there are secondaries that can be attached to that. All right. So these are some of the things. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on these locations, but familiarize yourself, especially when it came to Agent Orange exposure. So again, we talked about the Royal Thai Air Force bases. If you were stationed there during any of that time, then yeah, it's going to come in. Laos, Cambodia. Again, there were so many different locations. Again, if you see an accredited officer and you say, hey, I was in Guam, then they can verify those particular dates, look in your service personnel records, confirm, yes, you were APO, whatever it was at that time, and get you in, especially if you have any of those presumptive conditions. All right. All right. Radiation exposed Vietnam veterans. Now, this is not necessarily those atomic things. However, it could have been during a cleanup. I can't pronounce that first E word, atoll. I'm not even going to try to massacre it. However, if you know a veteran that served during that time frame, and again, if you look at this, this is not necessarily just Vietnam veterans, 77 to 80. So there may be a veteran that served during the cleanup. And this is where nuclear weapons or they had nuclear leaks and radiation was exposed during those cleanups. Then yes, that comes in. Um, like I said, I'm not even gonna say that again. That Spain, again, these are these were areas where cleanups in response to radiation leaks and or exposures were going to be considered. I've only seen one of these, and they were at Tool Air Force Base in Greenland, and that veteran was exposed, and so the type of cancer that he had did come in where it had been denied previously. So you definitely want, it's not just Agent Orange that you should be considered with. Okay? Now, Gulf War and post 9/11 vets, and this is where a lot of Vietnam veterans get angry at the Gulf War and post 9/11 vets, because as you see, a lot of these conditions and presumptives are respiratory. All right. COPD is one of the biggest ones that I see veterans of a particular age they have. However, it's not on the Vietnam presumptive list. It's not on that list. This is only for Gulf War and post 9/11 vets. And you definitely want to look at a lot of the territories that this covers, like Djibouti, Turkey, what is it, Kazakhstan, a lot of those areas. So it's not just, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Afghanistan. So you have to look at all of this. So again, you're looking at a lot of these conditions that are respiratory, chronic rhinitis and chronic sinusitis. It affects the same organ. However, those are two totally different conditions. Okay. So if you're diagnosed with both, then you definitely want to apply for both. And like I said, COPD, that's one. Most folks, hey, you get it from smoking. Not necessarily. They're seeing younger and younger veterans come down with COPD that never had these conditions. So you definitely want to look at this. Interstitial lung disease, a lot of these things are coming into play. Asthma, that was diagnosed after service. Notice that says after service. So yeah, if you were a Gulf War vet, never been diagnosed, and here you are, 10 or 20 years later, now all of a sudden you've been diagnosed with asthma. That comes in. It is a presumptive. It is not, none of these conditions here have to have been diagnosed or treated while on active duty. Again, this is where I said it is presumed to have been caused by the active duty service in those regions. Okay. And particulate matter in burn pit. This is a little different. All right. These are the cancers that are associated. Brain cancer, I'm seeing a lot more of those, unfortunately. Seeing a lot of brain cancers and actually a lot of the head and neck cancers. So this is a little different than your actual presumptive conditions. These are actual cancers. A lot of these are for any types of cancers. Now, I had a gentleman that just came into one of the offices I was visiting, colon cancer. That's gonna be that's a tough one to file for. However, I told the service officer, go ahead and file it. Go ahead and file it. No, it's not on any list that we see currently. But if the VA denies it and says it's not a presumptive condition, 5 years down the road, due to that research that I'm imploring you guys to get enrolled in, if they come back, hey, all of a sudden we've got a cluster of 30, 40-year-olds who are now being diagnosed with colon cancer, and the one thing they have in common is particulate matter. That can change the law, and then colon cancer comes back in, and then you're going to see VA start rolling out these letters that say, hey, if you were previously denied colon cancer, we're inviting you to come back in and get that refiled for, just like with the hypertension and the Vietnam veterans. So I say go ahead and file it. I say go ahead and file it. But just because you don't see it on this list right now does not necessarily mean that the VA won't consider it. Okay? Okay. And this is what I was talking about just a second ago. If a veteran was previously denied service connection for a disability that is now a presumptive, then usually the VA would send out a letter. Hey, we saw where we denied you, and yada yada, come back in. Or if the veteran has died, they send the letters to the surviving family. Then there could be potential benefits for that person. But if a veteran was previously denied for a presumptive condition, now we file it on what is called a supplemental claim or a VA form 20-0995. And all they would have to do is cite the PACT Act is the new evidence. When you file a supplemental for whatever has been previously denied, you have to have new and relevant evidence. And the new evidence for presumptives under the PACT Act is the law. And so that's why we only cite that. All right. TARA. Now, this is one thing that a lot of folks need to really, really pay attention to. TARA is like a subcategory of the PACT Act. It was introduced along in August of 2022. And it's the toxic exposure risk activity or activity. Let's just leave it at that. And what does that mean? It basically, it leads the claims the VA is a little more liberal in the way that they're thinking. Now, and I'll use myself. I went to Fort McClellan, Alabama for basic training. And if you were an military police, some basic training, or either nuclear, biological, chemical specialist or NDC person, that's where you went for school. And one of the things and at Fort McClellan in Anniston, Alabama, was Monsanto and Dow chemical companies. And those companies created, manufactured what I call, or what is known as, the rainbow herbicides. So a lot of folks just think that there's orange. No, there's actually pink, green, blue. Blue is now what they call Roundup. Green, pink, and purple, and white, if I didn't say that. So that's why they're called the rainbow herbicides. These were defoliants that were actually used in Vietnam. However, they were manufactured, stored there in Anniston, Alabama. Those locations are actually 2 miles outside of Fort McClellan. And so the groundwater, the ground supply, the soil, everything was contaminated by those chemicals. There was sarin gas, nerve agents. We're talking some heavy duty, powerful chemicals. And they were all stored in, and they contaminated the ground supply and the water supply there. The city of Anniston, their town folk, if you will, sued the makers of those chemicals, and they won over 700 and some odd $1 million. In 1999, the base was closed due to base closings. However, it kind of, in my opinion, linked itself to that settlement for the cities and citizens of Anniston. However, the VA does not concede that we that were stationed there were exposed. Well, Terra now comes into play. So it's a little more liberal. So if by chance a veteran comes to us and says, hey, the VA has denied me, we'll say hypertension, because hypertension is related and now a presumptive of Agent Orange. So what did I say? Fort McClellan manufactured Agent Orange. So a veteran could come in and say, I was stationed there for 8-10 weeks, and I now have this presumptive condition. And we can file it. And we'll use that, Fort McClellan. So when the VA looks at this claim, doesn't necessarily have to be anything prevalent. All they have to do is look in the service personnel records. Okay, Sergeant Butler was stationed at Fort McClellan, Alabama for 8 weeks for basic training. And here's the studies, like myself, I will find, I have studies. The studies are, well, guess what? Yes, Agent Orange was manufactured there. Hypertension is a presumptive of Agent Orange. And guess what? Now it all comes in. And I know that it works. And those claims are actually now being granted because I've had 2 Fort McClellan veterans that have now been awarded service connection based on the chemical exposures to where they were at McClellan. So, say for instance, I look at myself. I was a personnel administration specialist, so hearing loss is not prevalent or profound for my MOS, low probability. However, when I tell an examiner I was on the back of a C-130 and a 141 at least twice a month with no hearing protection, that now comes into play. So again, it doesn't necessarily have to be on a list, but if we can prove that this MOS, this exposure, and noise is considered a toxic exposure. So if we can prove to the VA that there's a possibility or probability that this condition was because of this particular part of my military service, then you stand a better chance of getting it. It does not necessarily have to be under the particular act. I have a claim right now. I have a very good friend of mine who was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and he was a Navy or naval loadmaster. He did a lot of work around aircraft for the Navy. Go figure. But one of the things that I found out, he was exposed to a chemical called cadmium. And I had never heard of cadmium. But cadmium is a heavy metal material used to either clean corrosion off of airplane parts. And so I asked him, and I said, hey, did you ever use this? Of course, yeah, we use that stuff all the time. This is during the 70s where we didn't know it was, excuse me, a carcinogen or anything. So yeah. And I found 3 studies out there on Google. And yes, cadmium can cause prostate cancer, and that is now up for rating decision with the VA. And so again, sometimes the unnecessary or even something like that, like I said, if you worked around a chemical or you worked around something that could have possibly caused this, the VA is a little more liberal when granting service connection based on terror. And I hope that is a good definition of that. Rodney, what do you think?
I think so. I think it's great.
Okay. All right. So again, just to kind of, I probably jumped into this slide without knowing it, but it opens the door for the VA to consider disabilities that disability claims by veterans due to past daily exposure that could result in chronic or potential illness or impairments. And again, so you kind of have to think outside of the box. What did you do every day? Of course, I can't say I was exposed to typewriter dust, but again, jumping on the back of an aircraft, that comes into play. Also, God forbid, if I come up with one of those disabilities as is associated with Agent Orange, diabetes, hypertension, lung cancer, then you can best believe I will be reopening my claim under the terror. Now, one thing about reopening, if you're 100% or this and that and the other, you definitely want to not just open for willy-nilly stuff. And what I mean is if you're 90%, a lot of veterans think, oh, all I need is 10%, let me file for tinnitus. Well, that can also get you reduced, okay? VA right now, we're seeing more reductions than ever. Are they actually after you? No. However, if you're not going to VA healthcare, that can get you. If you're asking pretty much for frivolous stuff, they can send you back for an exam. So the VA is going to tell you, hey, we've got PACT ACT out here, but they're not going to tell you that PTSD regulations changed a few years ago. So if you were diagnosed and been receiving 70%, I would say, 5-10 years ago, the old 70 is now the new 50. So again, see your accredited rep. We're going to look at the dates. We're going to let you know, hey, Sergeant Butler, I really don't think you need to reopen this because you're rated under the old system and you said you hadn't gone to VA healthcare. You're not keeping up with your healthcare. So right now you're out of the radar. But if you're not going to healthcare and you start reopening for something thinking all you need is 10% when actually you need an additional 50, you could be up for a re-exam. Okay. So we definitely want to talk about those types of things too. But so the presumptive conditions implied are for those veterans that served in those designated areas and have been diagnosed with one or more specific. So they don't have to prove service connection. That's just presumptive. Basically, Tara is going to come in for folks like me who served during a period of war, didn't necessarily deploy, but was exposed to other things other than those particulate and burn pits and all that good stuff. So if you have any questions, definitely see an accredited rep. All right. And this is one category that kind of falls under healthcare that doesn't get a lot of advertisement, is the PACT Act. Now, this is basically the Veterans Comprehensive Prevention, Access to Care and Treatment Act of 2020. And I always like to push this because if you are having mental health crisis or think you may be, or your family thinks, then yes, the PACT Act comes into play. And this is for all veterans, not necessarily service connected or anything like that. This is for all veterans. And what it does is it guarantees a veteran in a crisis, a suicidal crisis, they can go to a VA or non-VA. I should put community hospital out there and get free emergency health care right then and there. Okay. And if the veteran themselves go, be sure to tell them, I'm here under the PACT Act. If it's a family member, educate your family member, especially if you're having a mental health crisis or they think you're having a mental health crisis. This needs to be filed under the PACT Act. And so again, the community hospitals are there to treat even if you go inpatient until they can actually get you transported to a VA hospital. This is important. I can't say, we were talking about suicide earlier today, how many veterans lose their life every day to suicide. So keep in contact with your buddy. Keep in contact with your neighbor. You see a flag, see a hat, ask them, are they okay? All right. And it takes nothing but, a simple phone call to, 911, 988 if they're in crisis. But here in the community, call your local first responders and get that person to a hospital. And that is at no cost to that veteran or the veteran's family. This is free. Okay. All right. Now, accredited reps, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning. Georgia Department of Veterans Service and our service officers are all accredited. I do the accreditation, so you can probably tell I'm pretty hard on somebody if you do not get your training. So, we have to go through so many hours of training of VA materials every year to stay accredited. Our accreditations are certified through the Office of General Counsel in Washington, D.C. And so this is not just service officers. This can also be what they call a paid, oh goodness, brain cramp, but an accredited person has gone through training. Right now, it seems very rampant. I guess people are trying to make $1 out of 15 cents, and I can fill your paperwork out. I can do this, I can do that. And unfortunately, they're being paid. We are not paid service officers, okay? There are claims agents. Those are the ones that are paid. Your attorneys are paid. We are not. We are accredited here is Georgia Department of Veterans Service. We are a certifying official. We are accredited as an organization, but we're also accredited with now. Well, unfortunately, we lost one. American Red Cross. They decided not to continue their VSO line. However, if you are with American Red Cross as a service organization, then we can still access those files. But we are still accredited with VFW, American Legion, Retired Enlisted Association, and several more. But that's what we do. In order to maintain our accreditations, I have to provide trainings on every person. We have over 100 employees, and I have to certify that every year to OGC in order for us to maintain our accredited services. Now, again, these so-called, I call them criminals, but these people are taking money from veterans that are either desperate to get monies from the VA. I think it's criminal. You deserve because you served, and no one should have to pay for those benefits. You should not pay a doctor for those diagnoses. You should not pay someone to fill out those forms. We as the state of Georgia, we do that for you. If you get an award from the VA, 100% of that goes to you. But when you have these agents or these so-called claim sharks, that's what we are. They smell money in the water, and that's what they're going after. And unfortunately, veterans they are desperate to get these benefits. I got an email, and again, I get a lot of complaints. I got an email from a veteran who has spent well over $30,000 to someone that was not accredited. The claim had never been filed. They were perfect. They were stating that they were a VA employee. And when I got the screenshots or snapshots of what they did on their phone, I said, why are you paying somebody through a pay app for benefits? And I thought I was talking to the VA. So unfortunately, you should not have to do that. You shouldn't do that. We're here, we're free, and we're accredited. So when veterans are out there, and again, there has been there is, I don't want to say legislations. There's an act right now where they're trying to get these claim sharks and these agents or these perpetrators to stop doing it. And I know it went up. I know Senator, I think Ossoff is actually working on that along with Senator Warnock. I don't know where it is as far as the timetable, but Congress has been they're on to this as well. But I think it's criminal. So if you're out there, don't pay for it. Don't pay for this stuff. If they're not saying, hey, I'm accredited, and having you sign a documentation for us when you come to us, or and you say, hey, I want one of either your organization or your affiliate to represent me, we're going to give you a VA form 21-22. And that form is an appointment of a veteran service organization. There's one out there that's a 21-22 alpha. And that form is a little different. However, you're assigning that to a specific person for payment. So again, if this person shows up, hey, Mr. Rodney, I can do your VA claim, and you're, hey, what's your accreditation number? You want to look me up? I'm a OGC accreditation number 9416. You can pop that in your Google and see the agencies I'm accredited for. But definitely deal with somebody that is reputable. Okay? Don't get your money taken. If you've worked this hard to save your money and you're trying to get those benefits, you don't have to pay for them. Okay? And now, Georgia Department of Veterans Service, we now have 55 offices throughout the state of Georgia. They have them also on Fort Moore, soon Fort Eisenhower, and what's the other one? Fort Stewart. Yeah, I don't think Stewart changed its name yet. so I'm still on the Benning and Gordon mindset, but
Yep.
those offices are there. However, to get on a DoD post, you either have to be a military retiree, an active duty service member, or have an ID card, a DoD ID card. But we have them all over. We also have an independent appeals division. So if a veteran has to go up before Board of Veterans Appeals, or hearing there at the regional office, we have 10 service officers in place at the regional office to help you through that appeal. And we have an independent women's veterans program, and that is not just women, it is the LGBTQ plus community. We also have let's see, the newest office that we have is we have a homeless coordinator through GDVS as well. So pretty much it's one-stop shop when you come here. Only thing we can't do is we can't give you a physical, but we can actually advise you on any potential benefit with the VA that there is. And with that also comes the state benefits as well. So we're there to help not just the veterans family, and anybody in the community. That concludes my presentation. So I would hope that everyone in the listening audience would definitely reach out to those of us here at the Georgia Department of Veterans Service. That slide also has our actual state website on there, and you can just kind of browse around and see a lot of the things that we're actually doing in the community. I love doing these types of forums. My goal is to educate as many veterans as possible on their benefits and what their entitlements are. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Brother Rodney.
Hey, thanks, Ramona. And we absolutely love having you on doing these webinars for us. Like I said, it's one of the most sought after episodes that we do, in the whole gamut of the Black Man's Roundtable. So yeah. And I will add, though, that there are a couple of things that I tell veterans, and that is, don't be afraid to utilize the VA, healthcare system. Like you said, it's not your grandfather's a VA system. I utilize it, and I don't have any problems with it. I use my private, TRICARE, and I use the VA, and I tell you, there's a lot of things that I prefer the VA. I'm not
Yeah.
going to sit here and name stuff or whatever, but there are things that the VA medical service that I prefer. But and also people, I also tell veterans that you did not have to retire in order to be eligible for compensation. There are people that believe that, well, I only did 3 years or 4 years or 2 years or whatever, right? And I'm like, okay, chances are you didn't come out whole. You didn't come out the way you went in.
Exactly.
Chances are you didn't. So no, you don't have to retire to have, and also people think you had to have went to combat.
Right.
No, no,
I
no, no,
love
absolutely not. Yeah.
I
So
love telling folks it is my pleasure to make you disabled. Because, and I know that sounds oxymoronic.
yeah,
However, just like you said, unfortunately, I see so many veterans that'll come. They're literally, I hate saying it like this, they're almost on death's doorstep
yeah,
before they come to get help. And I'm like, no, dude, come on. So it is my pleasure to make someone disabled, because not only is that going to change, you get you a check. I hate to say it like that, but it's going to change your benefits. Of course, 10% disability makes you eligible for VA healthcare.
right,
However, again, you're probably going to be in priority group, 5 or 6, and you still have to pay. 30%, then you get allowances for dependents. They don't have any benefits, but that's just a little extra money for your spouse, your kids. Um, 50%, then they get the free healthcare
right,
overall. And then, of course, the coveted 100%, that changes a lot. So for here in the state of Georgia, 100% P&T, depending upon where you live, your property tax exemption. I live here in Clark County, Athens, and my property is 100% exempt. I pay absolutely no property tax. Um, I get dental through the VA. Let's see. Oh yeah, and let's not forget the what is it, TAVT on your vehicle. So you get your free tags and
yeah,
things. Hunting and fishing license. So 10% also when it comes to state benefits gets you a discount parks pass. So if
right,
you decide you want to go to the state parks and stuff like that, um certain percentage in certain states, then you can get the national parks exempt. So there are small little
yeah,
intricacies. One of my friends didn't even know he's 40%. He has his own business, and I said, "Dude, are you getting your free business license?" And he's like, "No, I pay for it." I was like, "Why? You're disabled." So even a 10% disability, and you have your own, either a peddler's license or business license, that's free from the state of Georgia. So again, I implore veterans to, seek us out before you do anything. If you're unsure of your benefits, or you think, oh, well, I'm getting my check and that's it. No, there's so much more.
and
So
Ramona, I also tell people that the benefits are actually better than the pay. Well, I'm not gonna say better than the pay, but the benefits are great.
they
They're
are.
yeah, yeah, the benefits are great, and you save so much
Hmm.
money and so much time and effort. With the benefits, and there are so many benefits that, man, you could probably never know them all.
That is true.
It's a lot of benefits out there. So, um, but anyway, great webinar, great presentation as always, Ramona. Like I said, this is one of our most viewed, watched, sought after episodes of the Roundtable that we do. And before we get out of here, though, I do want you to just remind people one more time how they can just reach you.
Well, the best way, of course, is via my email, because it is hooked to my cell phone.
Yep.
My email address is ROPER at vs.ga.gov. So it's R Roper at VS is in Veteran Service at Georgia.gov. That's it.
And believe me, I can attest to that. It is definitely on her cell phone. So look, so for everybody that's going to ask me, what's your email address? You have it now, guys. You have it now, ladies and gentlemen. So, contact Ramona, because I always tell people when I recommend her is that if Ramona can't get it for you, it probably can't be got. Now, I'm not telling you what to do, but I just know I've been working with Ramona, 3 years now, whatever. And
It's
so
been longer than that.
it's been longer than that. Yeah.
It's about four years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I just tell people, hey, just reach out to her. Reach out to her. She may not be able to get to you immediately, but she will get to you sooner or later.
That's
so Ramona, thanks a lot as always. We appreciate it. And so anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Catch the Black Man's Roundtable the third Thursday of the month. Also catch the Black Man's Roundtable with Rodney and Rodney the second and fourth Thursday of the month, and the Black Man's Roundtable Local Lookout with Rodney and Bobby the first Thursday of the month. All episodes drop at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And yeah, we're growing. We're trying to get the word out there. So yes, we have expanded the Black Man's Roundtable. We definitely look forward to having you guys watch all of our episodes and all of the work that we do and all of the special guests that we bring on. So until next time, we'll see you in them suites and them streets. Peace. Don't forget to check us out on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Do you have show ideas or want to be on the show? Shoot us an email at blackmansroundtable@gmail.com. And please follow us on Facebook.